One of the best ways to grow as an auditor and become more skilled and be able to find more critical bugs and uncover more vulnerabilities in new code bases is to simply understand more systems and see more implementations of different DeFi protocols. Whether it be a traditional AMM code base or an NFT-Fi implementation or a lending protocol or a synthetics assets exchange or anything else, it helps to just get familiar with different patterns of design and different commonalities and different implementations of sort of classes of DeFi applications. And so this general DeFi knowledge will help you get through the initial context gaining phase, which is the most time intensive phase of an audit, a lot quicker, and perhaps even give you some easy findings right off the bat or some great leads and stuff to dig into because you're already aware of common vulnerabilities and bugs with other similar systems. So with all that said, I'm going to share a kickoff call that we had with our team at Guardian for GMX V2, which is a synthetics assets exchange. And so this kickoff call is going to give you a high level understanding of the design, the goal, and some initial code path walkthroughs of GMX's V2 synthetics exchange. This is one of the largest Solidity code bases that is out there, clocking in easily at over 12,000, 13,000 lines of Solidity code. So again, this is just a very high level walkthrough of the overall architecture, what the goals of the system are, and then of course some high level walkthroughs of exactly how each of those goals is achieved by the system. All right, before we hop in, if you don't know me, my name is Owen. Over a year and a half ago, I founded Guardian Audits, and since then, our team has uncovered dozens and dozens of critical and high vulnerabilities from auditing hundreds of smart contracts. And my goal with each of these videos, and especially this one, is to essentially distill down everything that I've learned from personally auditing and helping our team audit for over 1,000 hours and give all of those learnings directly to you so that you can ultimately become a much better smart contract auditor than I ever could be. All right, without further ado, let's get straight into the GMX V2 overview. So first of all, from a high level, we need to understand, okay, first of all, what even is GMX, right? I'm sure you guys probably have a high level understanding of GMX as a system, but just to be clear so we're all on the same page, GMX is a perpetuals exchange, and particularly GMX V2 is a synthetic assets perpetuals exchange. So what does all of this mean? This means, first of all, a perpetuals exchange means that I can have positions that I want to, if I want to open a position and long a token, I can do that on this decentralized exchange without any, sort of KYC or anything like this. I can just use my wallet, use my crypto assets to open a long, I can open a short, and then when I would like to, I can close out my short, I can close out my long, realize any profits, realize any gains. I can also set sort of like limit orders where I can have a take profit on my long. If I end up longing Ether at $1,000, I can say I want to basically get out of my position at $1,500 and just realize that profit immediately at $1,500, right? And not have to think about it, not have to log on and connect my wallet and close out my position. And then similarly, if I want to get out of my position, if I lose a lot of money, I can set, something like a stop loss at a $800 price range for Ether if I'm longing, right? So that is essentially what a perpetuals exchange is. I'm sure you guys probably already know. And then also another aspect of GMX V2, which is the big addition, is the fact that it is a synthetics assets exchange. So what this means is that no longer does it have to be one of the assets that is provided as collateral, like for instance in their GLP token, which is an outdated model now that they have this V2. Now you can trade really any asset that just has a price feed available, right? So if I wanted to long gold on chain, I could do that as long as there's a price feed for it. If I wanted to short Tesla on chain, you could do that. And so you might be thinking like, well, how do they achieve that, right? Like how do I pay somebody out for gold appreciating when, obviously we don't have gold on chain, or, there might be some like ERC20 derivatives or something like this, but we don't actually have gold on chain, right? So the way that this is achieved is they have a backing. So we have a singular market. And so this market is a smart contract. And in this smart contract, we have a backing long token and a backing short token. So we'll say we have a short token here and a long token here. And so let's say that these backing collateral tokens wanted to essentially enable the trading of Solana, right? And so Solana is our index token. It's the thing that's being traded in the market. And so this is the synthetic token. We don't actually have Solana on chain on Arbitrum, for instance. We're just going to have that as sort of like our synthetic version of what we're trading when traders open a position in this market here. So this long token then needs to pay out people who profit on their Solana trade, and this short token here needs to pay people out for a short position that profits, right? So if I short Solana and Solana goes from, $200 like it was at down to basically pennies, which is what it's at now, you're going to be paying them out in the short token that is stored in the smart contract for the market. So what are these short tokens and long tokens? So the long token should be something that is generally tied to the price of whatever the index token is, right? So for instance, a decent long token in this case is going to be Ether. So we'll have like wrapped Ether will be a backing long token for this market. Generally speaking, as the price of Solana goes up, the price of Ethereum is probably also going up. And so as people are profiting on Solana, then we know that we're probably going to have enough collateral to pay them out if, we've got a backing Ether. And you might be wondering, well, what if Solana increases in price greater than Ether increases in price? And that's, a very existential risk to the system, and we can get into that. They have solutions for that, but we won't talk about that just yet because it's a bit more of in-depth detail of the system. And then, of course, a backing short token. This is usually going to be something that is like a stable coin, right? So this will be like a USDC, so that, when the price of Solana goes down, the price of Ether is probably also going to go down, but you want to be able to have that USDC as the short token to be able to pay out those shorts as shorts come in profit. And then similarly, when when you open a position in this market, so let's say I'm a trader, I want to trade on Solana. Solana is the index token of this market. Let's say I'm like an absolute Solana moon boy for whatever reason. Maybe I want to get back into FTX. I want to get into the relaunch of FTX. I'm like one of the 20 people who want to join that reboot. Then I'm going to take some, let's say I put $100 down as collateral, and I can provide that in either of the collateral tokens. So let's say in this instance, I want to provide $100 of Ether here. So this will be like point whatever Ether. This will be the collateral for my position. And so now I can open a position that is potentially up to, like, let's say I use 10x leverage, right? So the size of my position can be $1,000. And so now I'm trading $1,000 of Solana with just $100 of Ether as my collateral. Now what happens is if the price of Solana drops so far that my position is in, like, let's say I could drop the value of my position to like $902, then that would almost nearly wipe out entirely all of my collateral, right? So I've lost $98 here. And so that would leave my remaining collateral at $2, and I'm going to get essentially liquidated, right? Because I've literally only got $2 left to back my $1,000 or my now $902 position. So that we're going to see, in the code they have basically a threshold, which is like the leverage threshold that you're allowed to have. And if you go below this, you're going to get liquidated. And so when I have only, $2 left, I'm going to get liquidated. This collateral that I initially had, this $100 that was basically given to this contract to hold in case my position, basically was in a huge loss like this, they're going to take that from me. I no longer own that. They're going to give it to the pool. And so the people who were providing the backing tokens here, they're going to get the profit from me getting liquidated. And then I'm not going to have basically any position left, right? So that's how generally how opening a position in one of these markets here works, and then also how actually, paying out these positions is going to function. So any high level questions on like the how the markets work or anything like this? Let's see. First of all, we will go through and I want to discuss sort of like another high level design that they have, and we'll also go to what is essentially the entry point of the system, which is the exchange router. So we're going to go to this contract, and one thing I like to do is just literally minimize everything. We don't need to look at like all the code and get super overwhelmed. We literally just want to see, okay, so this is the contract where people are interacting with the exchange. And so you can see, there's some sending stuff, but here's the interesting point that I want to get to is that users create a deposit. This is how they're going to be, providing the liquidity of the short tokens and the long tokens. And when I say liquidity kind of in air quotes, because it's more just they're providing backing tokens, right? They're providing the backing tokens that the traders are able to then open positions with and ultimately leverage. And the interesting point here is that when you create a deposit, notice that this function is not just called deposit, right? It's called create deposit. And that's because the deposit doesn't immediately happen when you create it right here. So what happens is if we just do like a quick sketch, what I do is I as a user, I call this create deposit function. And let's say I wanted to deposit 100 USDC into the system, right? So I have $100 and I wanted to provide this as the backing short token, right? So I want to give some backing collateral to this market. So I'm going to take this 100 USDC and I'm going to call create deposit. At this point, my money is not transferred directly to the market contract over here. It is actually taken and put in to like a temporary holding address. So we'll call it like the vault, right? And you'll see this written in the code. We'll look at it in a second. We take that 100 USDC and we just put it in the vault. And then what will happen is after I've created my deposit and we have this in the vault and we have also, stored like a storage variable of like the actual deposit and all of the information. It points back to, me as the creator. It points to how much I deposited and stuff like this, right? So now that we have the funds actually here in the vault and we have the deposit having been stored, now what will happen after this is the keeper will go ahead and execute the deposit. And so we can see this on the deposit handler contract. Again, we can minimize stuff. We don't need to look at any specific implementation right now. We have the execute deposit, which is going to be only called by the keeper. And so this is where the keeper is going to come in. He's going to see the deposit. We have a deposit key that's going to be provided right here. This is the key that points, there's like this deposit. We want to execute this deposit that we just made. And so the keeper is going to execute our deposit. And basically what that's going to do is it's going to go look up. It's going to be like, oh, who made this deposit? Which market are they trying to get to? Are they trying to provide long tokens? Are they providing short tokens? Whatever, just general information about the deposit. And then the keeper is going to basically take the money from the vault and put it into the market directly, right? And then the accounting for us having provided these short tokens is ultimately we are going to be provided what is called like a market token. And so that is just an ERC20 token. It's like, if you're familiar with like an optimizer vault, it's like a vault token. It just basically tells you you own this percentage of tokens deposited in this market for these backing tokens. And so this is sort of like the two-step process where first you create a deposit, and then at that point you've already sent your money to the system. It's just holding it in this vault contract, and then a keeper will come along and they actually do the execution of your deposit. And the reason they have this two-step system is to essentially avoid a lot of front running and sort of MEV style attacks on the exchange and on users of the exchange. So that's why they have this sort of separated. First you create the deposit and we take your money, and then our keeper will come and execute it, right? And you don't know exactly what the order is of deposits and orders being opened on the exchange, right? So that's how they sort of limit that attack vector, because it is a really rough attack vector to get around for an exchange like this. So we can see in the exchange router, that's not just for deposits. We have create withdrawal, which happens in the same manner. You'll create your sort of like request to withdraw, and then it will actually be executed by the keeper, and then you will have fully withdrawn. And then similarly for the order, you can create again, like a request for an order, and then the keeper will go ahead and actually execute that, right? So let us just do a very, very high level walkthrough of what it looks like maybe when I create an order. So we'll do deposit and creating an order. We'll just do a very high level walkthrough, and this will just be like basically me just gathering context. I won't go, I won't be too focused on any details. It's going to be very cursory, high level, just walking through the contracts and explaining, how the flow works and stuff like this. So right here, we're top level in the exchange router. This is where the user is going to interact with the system. He's going to call the create deposit function, and this is going to basically go straight to the deposit handler, and we're going to create a deposit here on the handler. And then this, we just have a feature validation so they can shut off this feature if that needs to happen. And then they go to this library here to actually implement all of the logic. So here I'm going to skip over a good deal of individual logic. The important part of stuff that's happening here that I'm seeing is we are getting those tokens from when the user deposited them in the deposit vault. And that will happen via a multi-call in the exchange router. We don't need to go into the details of that right now, but essentially the deposit vault, this is the vault that we talked about here. This is that V. This is where sort of saying, okay, how many initial long tokens did we just get? How many short tokens did we just get? This is the backing short tokens that they want to deposit and the backing long tokens that they want to deposit. And then what we're doing is, there's some payment of an execution fee and then the creation of the deposit, right? So this deposit here, this is exactly what I'm talking about when we talk about this deposit that's stored in storage here, it just carries all the information of this request that the user has to deposit, right? So we've got things like who was the owner? Do they have like a callback contract? Which you'll see that's another interesting way that we can cause some bad things to happen in the system is everything has a callback contract associated with it if the user wants to use that feature. What was their initial long token? You can use a swap path to be able to swap stuff into what the resulting token is that you want to deposit. And you have like what are the initial amounts, what's the current block number, stuff like this, and then an execution fee, and then if we should unwrap the native token, which actually, yeah, I don't even know why this is necessary on a deposit. So this is literally something that, like, as I'm looking through the code, I'll just leave a tag like, why do we need this on a deposit, right? And then I'll just move on. Like, I won't get stuck on that, but just something that initially I didn't understand. I don't think they actually even need this. They shouldn't need that for any reason, but we'll see. Maybe they added something, or I'm probably forgetting something. But essentially, they make a key for this deposit and then they store that. And then that's where we're storing this deposit with all of that information in storage. And then this will be accessible by the keeper later. So at this point, the user has created their deposit, they've sent their tokens into the system. And then what we can do is we can go back to let me just go back, and we're back in the deposit handler. And then we can minimize this function again because we're done with it. And then the keeper is going to pick up here with the execute deposit function. So, right, we can see this is only for the keeper to call. This is where we're going to take the deposit, the money that's currently sitting in the vault, the deposit that's been created in storage. We're going to actually take it and put it into the system. And you can see there's, a try catch wrapped around this, and that's something we can dive into, as we continue through the audit. We won't look at that today. So we're going to essentially do some stuff with setting prices. This is another thing that we're going to gloss over right now. Just create, some params so we can have everything that we need on the deposit, and then we're going to execute the deposit. And this is just going to do, first of all, a lot of like housekeeping, like validation. This is like validating that the prices that were sent from the keeper to execute this deposit are actually valid for when the deposit was submitted, right? So the keeper can't send like some really crazy prices from 1,000 blocks ago to execute you and cause drastic consequences. And then we're going to just fetch the market that this deposit is intended for, and then we're going to get prices from the market that were set previously by the keeper, and then we do some more validation. And then this is the swaps that I was talking about. You have an option to swap the initial token that you provided into the final token that you want to be deposited into the market, right? So if I wanted to deposit USDC, if I wanted to deposit USDC here into this USDC ETH market, I could come up here with DAI and ultimately swap it to USDC first, and then deposit that USDC in here. And so that's what this is doing. It's giving them the opportunity to make that happen. And then we do some logic where we get like the USD deposited, all this stuff. There's a notion of price impact, which we can continue to go through as we go throughout the audit. And then essentially this is where we're going to, in this function, we're going to execute the deposit, which is actually going to end up sending stuff to that particular market contract, and then we're going to give people their tokens, right? So now we've just essentially incremented this. This is going to end up getting sent to the user, this amount of market tokens, and then we remove the deposit from the storage after we're done with it, and then emit some events and call the callback and pay execution fee and housekeeping, stuff like that. So that's high level of this function. Quickly, we'll do like a very light high level of this internal function here. Really just the important thing that's happening in here, if we sort of, like shield our eyes from all of the code that's going on here. The important things here are, of course, there's some positive impact amount, which is their way of incentivizing people to balance the pool. If there's a ton of short tokens deposited here, but not a lot of ether deposited, well, they want to have a balanced market so that people are able to open both long and short positions at an equal magnitude. So what they want to do is incentivize depositors to get a little boost if I'm going to be depositing ether when there's not nearly as much ether as there is USDC. So that's essentially what positive price impact, and of course there's negative price impact to disincentivize people who are depositing USDC when there's already a ton of USDC. So that's all that is. And then you'll see this, which is what we're going to get into shortly, which is how they're doing the accounting, right? So we've got this apply delta to pool amount. This is just how they're keeping track of what all these tokens are for when they're in this contract. So this contract, it gets sent, first of all, it gets sent the short token, it gets sent the long token that are from deposits. It also gets sent collateral from traders who are depositing collateral. And it also has an amount set aside for price impact in what they call the price impact pool, right? And so this needs to be paid out to people in the event that they increase the balance in the pool. And so there's a few different values here that are stored in the pool, but if you just use like the balance of from an ERC20 token to say like, oh, how much deposits do we have in this contract? You can't do that because balance of on USDC will give you the total balance of deposits plus whatever's sitting in the price impact pool plus whatever users have deposited as collateral in USDC. And so they keep track of this in different ways. And we actually have a good chart of this over here. So what happens is they essentially just have a storage variable that says, okay, you had 100 wrapped ETH sitting in our market contract, right? This sticker on the left is analogous to what this is here, right? So we have 100 ether over here. Then we can go to the data store, which is essentially just like a single contract that holds a lot of the storage for the system, and it will tell us, okay, I know we have this 100 wrapped ether here, but how does that break down? So the pool amount, this is what people have deposited, is 90. The impact pool is 2, and then the collateral is 8. So traders have deposited a net of 8 wrapped ether. And so this is just how they're keeping track of, how this balance in the contract breaks down across these three things. And that's exactly what we're seeing here is them doing the accounting. So right here specifically, they're applying delta to this pool amount. So you see this is positive impact amount. So they're taking the impact pool amount and they're taking a little bit and they're crediting it to the depositor as a part of the pool amount. And then of course, at the end here, we'll see they're doing it again. This time they are depositing the amount that ended up getting deposited. So like, the amount after fees and then, whatever fees went to the pool, not important. Essentially, they're depositing what I deposited, right? So this is where the deposit is happening. I took my 100 USDC, in this case, we have wrapped ether, and I put it into the pool amount. That's exactly what this line, apply delta to pool amount, is doing. And it's taking essentially what we deposited plus, whatever fees and stuff like this. That's basically everything you need to know about depositing. That's how depositing works. I understand that there are a lot of moving parts here and the design can get somewhat disorienting, but that's why we have this video. This is being, all recorded for you guys to be able to refer back to. And then of course, we're here to walk you through our context and how we think about these things as we go, right? All right, fantastic. So yeah, like there's a lot to digest. So definitely this video will be very helpful, and I hope it's been, pretty much as clear as it could be. There are a lot of moving parts here, so I imagine like you'll just need to digest it and sort of, get your hands on the code yourself and sort of walk through. And I would highly recommend like just come in here, minimize the functions like we have here, and just, sort of see what's the high overarching structure of things before you get wrapped up on any individual line, because that's just going to impact the velocity of how fast you're able to move through the code base and gain context. And with a big code base like this, context is everything. Once you have context, you can look at any particular line and understand it in 1/10 the time. So it's all a game to just get the context on the system and understand it from a high level as fast as possible, because then from there it's a downhill battle. You're going to see all these bugs as you're literally just walking through. You're going to understand, oh, that's going to be a vulnerability. The system is so large that, and there's so many different knobs that attackers have, it's really hard to not start to think about, a dozen different attack vectors at once. And at least a few of those are going to be valid, and almost everything, by the nature of the system, almost everything is manipulatable enough to turn critical. So really there's a lot of opportunity to twist things only after you get the context. So that's why we're going to place a lot of emphasis on just like understanding the system as a whole from a high level first. And then once you have all the context and understand the design, then you guys are gonna, it's all downhill from there. You guys are gonna crush it. Right, so we've done deposits. We've done a decent high level overview of that. Then what we'll do is I will go ahead and walk through orders from a very high level. And then we'll see if, I assume there might be other questions on that, or we could talk about any of the more interesting things like the ADL feature or something like that. So we'll go ahead and start off here. We're back in the exchange router. This is where the user is going to interact with the system. They're going to call this create order function, right? So we're creating our request to create an order on the exchange. And so we go to the order handler, which actually implements this create order. And then just a note on this, you'll notice only controller can call this on the handler. The controller is going to be the exchange router, right? So again, we have our feature. They can turn this off if necessary. And then we just go to the library that actually implements the logic. Great, so here, again, very similarly to what we saw with the deposit, is that essentially what they're doing is they're recording in the deposit into the vault. So there's a lot of if cases here. We're just going to skip over all of that right now and focus on the fact that really what they've done here is they've just transferred in to this address. We're recording in what we transferred into the vault, right? So this is exactly where we're getting, what value was transferred in for collateral, right? And this is the collateral that the user is putting down to be able to open their position. Okay, and then just like we saw with deposits, we're just creating a big order object that's going to be stored in storage, and the keeper is going to have access to this when they go and actually execute the order. And then over here, this is all just, a ton of the housekeeping stuff essentially. And really the important thing here is that we're getting the key for the order, and then we're storing that in the order store. And this is where we store it so that the keeper is able to handle it later when we execute it. So at this point, the user has finished this create order transaction. Their order has been essentially made. We took their collateral tokens, we took their USDC, whatever they wanted to provide as collateral, and we created the order object, and we have a key now for it. So we can close this, and let me go back until I get to, let me actually just go straight to the order handler. So we're done with this create order function. You'll see, of course, there's like update. I'm just going to minimize everything. And we can go to execute order. This is probably these two functions, create order and execute order. These are the most important functions in the order handler. Then, of course, we're going to go into here, and we're not going to, pay too much mind to what's going on here. Not too important. Of course, they have another feature that they can, they can turn off execution if need be for particular order types. And then we're going to go to the library. And then in the library, this is where, we do some housekeeping stuff where we set prices for the order here. Then this is where the magic happens. This is process order, and then, more housekeeping stuff. So this whole function is essentially set prices for the order, process the order. And so we'll hop through high level. Process order is right down here. And there are three main order types. So you see there's an increase order, a decrease order, and a swap order. And the way this basically breaks down is if I want to open a position or add to my position, right? So if I have created my long position, which is over here, let me zoom in here. So I've created my long. Remember, I came in here and I provided $100. To open this, I used an increase order, right? And I gave my $100 as collateral. I can also use an increase order to increase my position size. So if I saw that I was losing a ton of money, I would want to come in here and add a ton of collateral before I get liquidated. So I could come in and open an increase order for the same position and add collateral so that I didn't get liquidated. Or I could also choose to increase the size of my position. So these are increase orders. And then of course, if I wanted to decrease the size of my order, if I wanted of my position, decrease the size of the leverage I was taking, or take some collateral out, or even just exit my position entirely, then I can submit a decrease order. And so this could be like taking profits or realizing my loss and just closing my order or closing my position. Thirdly, we have just like a basic swap order, right? And this just allows people to come in on the exchange and swap using the deposited assets here. And so this is where the deposits are treated more like liquidity. And so then this is sort of like a ternary aspect of the exchange where it's like people are not necessarily using the deposited tokens here to open positions or perpetual positions per se, but they are able to use the deposit amounts here to swap. And of course, that just adds a whole nother layer of potential attack vectors and things like that. So yeah, I mean, you'll start to see a lot of interesting things that can happen when I can swap across markets and change the balances inside of markets and things like this. So quickly, I think what we'll do is we'll do a high level walkthrough of increase order, and then that will probably be the extent of what we look into for orders today. And yeah, and then we can see what we should final things we should address from there. So in process order from a high level, they give you the opportunity to provide any initial token and then swap that token to what your collateral token will ultimately be. So this is very similar to what we saw with deposits. I could provide 100 DAI right here, right? So I can provide 100 DAI, ultimately swap it to USDC, which is compatible with this market, and then deposit that 100 USDC into this market. And so you can do a similar thing when you're providing this collateral over here. This could be in DAI, and then I need to swap it to Ether to be able to deposit in here, or I could swap it to USDC and deposit it on the short token side, whatever I'd like to do. And of course, yeah, again, this is another thing that gives attackers another knob to twist when they have an order that can execute a swap like this right before the order executes. So really just we create a key for the position. So this is like if I want to come back and increase this position again, or if I want to close out my position, this is how I can reference my position, right? And then if the position doesn't exist, this is where we just, populate in like the market. This is the contract here that we're talking about. This is the market. And then we set the collateral token. Did they add the short token? Did they add the long token as collateral? And then is this a long? Is this a short? Stuff like this. And then of course we want to set the owner of the position. Okay, great. And then really from here, the interesting thing here is just that after we do all of this logic to actually do the increase of the position, then we remove that order from the order store, right? So at this point, the order has been executed. So we no longer need that order in the order store, so we remove it. So it can't be executed a second time. And of course, if there's a way for an order to still exist in the order store after this, then that is automatically a critical vulnerability because I'll be able to essentially double execute my order and get credited with double the amount while it should have only been executed once. Okay, so then this is the bulk of everything happening here is when we go into this library function and we increase position. So we'll do a very high level run through of this. There are a lot of, edge case like price impact things. We're just going to gloss over things like that. We're going to get to exactly the root. So we'll sort of shield our eyes from too much that's going on here with some funding fees stuff. This is one of the important parts here of processing collateral. So without even hopping into this function, what we're going to do here is essentially just add the collateral that was transferred in and then just account for it on the exchange, right? So basically let the market know, hey, we just received this collateral and you can increment the corresponding flags that we talked about, right? They need to increment well, they actually don't need to touch the pool amount, right? Because nobody's depositing. They need to change this one and to say, hey, we got this collateral. So that's what that function does. And then let's see here, here's some, just some checks here. And then we set the collateral amount on the position. So we're like, okay, your position now has this collateral amount. And then we're going to get the execution price for the order when you're opening or increasing your position. We do some impact pool stuff. We can, gloss over that for now. And then, we just do some calculations because we're going to need to know, how much did the position increase in terms of the tokens that the position holds in its sort of size. It's like how many Solana. So let's say I opened a long on Solana, which is the index token. Meanwhile, I deposited 100 USDC as my collateral token. This size delta in tokens is how many Solana did I increase my position by, right? So maybe I increased my position by 20 Solana or something like this. So then, we can really hop over all of the like borrowing fees and stuff like this. Here's where we're going to set the size of our position. The size of our position this is a USD value of what is the worth of the Solana at the time when we just added it, right? So if I opened my position and it was $1,000 position when I opened it, right? So the same example here where we have a $1,000 position on $100 of collateral. This is our size in USD. It's $1,000. And then that breaks down into, what is it, like 50 Solana or whatever it is. So our size in USD, this is $1,000. And this is sort of like our starting point, $1,000. And then if the price of Solana goes up, then we're going to be able to compare that to our size in USD and say, oh, we're in profit because our size in USD says we opened this position. When we opened it, it was only worth $1,000. But now that Solana has gone up, our position is actually worth $1,200, right? So then you can see we're very easily in a $200 profit. And then like we said, the size in tokens, this is simply the size of the position in terms of Solana, how much Solana is in the position, right? And then this is essentially how we're going to achieve the calculation where it's like we multiply the size in tokens by the current price of Solana to get the current value of the position. So this is going to be used to calculate the current value because we know how many Solana we hold in the position, and then this is used to calculate, you know, original price of position, right? So, and we could put price in air quotes. It's kind of like, what did you open this position at? So it was originally $1,000. The size was 20 Solana or whatever. Then the price of Solana goes up. We can essentially derive what's the current value of the position by multiplying. We have 20 Solana. We're going to multiply by the current price of Solana. Is that greater than the position size in USD? Great, we're in a profit. If it's less than the position size in USD, then we know we're in a loss, and our position, if we close our position, we're going to be realizing a loss, right? And then this is also how we can tell, does this position need to be liquidated, right? Is this position in so much of a loss that it can't even be adequately covered by the collateral that was provided by the trader? So that I'm sure, like, you'll be able to see how this is working throughout the contracts and stuff like this. But that's a high level of how they're able to calculate people's P&L essentially. Great. So we're going to ignore more funding fees, borrowing fees, and then this line they're essentially just updating the position, the state of the position in storage after you increase it. We just set just above. We set the size in USD, we set the size in tokens. Previously, we set other things that were important on the position, and then we set it in storage, right? And then, so this is where we're writing all of the changes that we've just made, all of the calculations we've made. And then we need to update open interest. Open interest is simply a measure of the total size that is open in positions aggregate in a market. So, for example, I have this position here that is $1,000 in size. So the amount that I'm contributing to open interest is $1,000. And then, of course, if we have Bob come along here and he opens a $2,000 size in USD position, he's going to be contributing $2,000 to the open interest. And so now if me and Bob, we're the only people in this market, the total open interest of the market is going to be both of these added together. So there's a total of $3,000 worth of open interest in this market. And so that's just what they're accounting for here. And then they do some validation, right? Like the position shouldn't be able to be liquidatable when you first open it or when you increase it. So, and then of course they need to do some reserves validation, which is, how they validate that the open interest that you're opening can be supported by the backing tokens here. Can we pay people out when they actually end up profiting, right? So that's essentially what's going on there. And then all of this stuff, we're going to gloss over that. That's essentially just another safety check. And then we handle some referral stuff and emit some events and then emit some more events. And then that's essentially the execution. That's like getting, pretty deep and gritty on the execution of increasing a position. So with that, let's not get too in depth on anything like that right out of the gate, but that is just a high level overview of deposits and orders. I know that that was a decent amount. That was a lot of high level like design and stuff like that. But yeah, do you guys have any questions? All right, guys, fantastic.